This is a healer guide for Priory of the Sacred Flame. Captain Dailcry is the leader of the army and he's a brutal tanking boss with a medium healer requirement or basically no healer requirement, depending on which lieutenant you choose to fight. He has 3 lieutenants that can be killed prior to engaging the boss. They are spread out across the dungeon at these points on the map. I looked at a number of logs and most groups killed 2 of the 3 lieutenants on the way to the boss. You should always kill Sergeant Shea Male and 1 other lieutenant before engaging the boss. Groups either choose to fight Tanner Dulma, the mage, or Elena Emberlands, the paladin. Tanner Dulma is a mage-type lieutenant. She has 2 single-target fire spells, and 1 can be interrupted, Fireball and Cinderblast. Elena is a paladin-type lieutenant. She has 2 abilities. Holy Radiance deals group-wide damage every 40 seconds. That's the main healer mechanic if you fight her. Try to use your healing cooldowns on this part. It's basically the only damage in the fight. Divine Judgment targets the tank and applies a debuff, increasing tank damage taken by 25%. Captain Dailcry abilities. Pierce Armor. This is the main damaging ability and it's a tank buster. It's a 10-second bleed. If you are fighting the mage with the boss, this is basically the only damage to worry about. Savage Mauling. The boss immobilizes a non-tank player and deals damage every half a second. The boss also gains a small shield that needs to be damaged off in order to remove the bleed/root. Hurl Spear. This is a frontal. It applies a bleed if you are hit. Baron Braunpyke is the Paladin boss. There are 3 things to remember. Dodge the hammers from Hammer of Purity. Your tank should be moving the boss when they spawn, so it's easier to dodge. Second, have healer cooldowns ready for Sacrificial Pyre. More on that later. Third, Castigator's Shield does minor damage to the party, and it also applies a slow. There is basically 1 major healing ability to watch out for, and 2 minor abilities. Sacrificial Pyre. The boss places a circle of light on the ground that needs to be soaked. It has 5 charges and needs to be soaked 5 times. When you soak a charge, it deals a chunk of damage to the group, and the soaker gets a debuff called Sacrificial Flame, which deals damage over 12 seconds, and that can stack. The general strategy for this mechanic is to have the tank soak 2 to 3 of the orbs. Try to save your external defensive buff for the tank during this time, especially if he soaks 3 times. That leaves 2 or 3 extra soaks. In a coordinated group, augmentation and DPS should probably do the soaking because the healer needs to heal at this part. Castigator's Shield. This is basically Divine Toll and it applies a slow. It's not very dangerous by itself, but the slow can make it hard to dodge the spinning hammers around the room, and this can also come out at the same time as Sacrificial Pyre. A good rule of thumb is to never use a cooldown on Castigator's Shield unless it's paired with Sacrificial Pyre. Burning Light. This is an interruptible cast that occurs once every 40 seconds. As a healer, you shouldn't have to worry about interrupting because it happens so infrequently, and the DPS will probably get it. If it does go off, a 10-second dot will be applied to the party, and the boss heals for 10% HP. Use a healing cooldown if the cast ever does go off. Prioress Murphree is a 2-phase encounter. I'll go over things to dodge first, then phase 1 damage abilities, and finally phase 2. There are 2 things to dodge, and they are present in both phases. Purify. This is a laser that targets 1 player and they need to run away from others. Blinding Light. This is a 4-second cast and you have to look away from the boss in order to dodge it. If you're facing the boss, it will hit you. And if it does hit you, you'll be disoriented for 4 seconds. So turn around when she casts this. Also, even if you turn around, it will still damage to players with the ability. Phase 1. Inner Fire is the primary healing mechanic. This is a 10-second dot that's placed on the party. It deals high damage and empowers Blinding Light's damage done. So Blinding Light will deal double damage if she has the Inner Fire. It can occur at the same time as Blinding Light, but let's not get confused. Inner Fire is far more dangerous than Blinding Light, so use your cooldowns for that. Phase 2. Upon reaching 50% health, the boss runs away to the top of the platform and starts dealing big damage that ramps up over time. You should use Bloodlust at this time while you're learning the boss. Barrier of Light. When she hits 50% and runs up the platform, she gets a shield. You have to break the shield in order to stop the AoE damage. Embrace the Light. This is the AoE damage. While the boss is shielded, she channels this spell and it ramps up damage over time. The ramping damage should last about 20 to 25 seconds, Maybe a little less time if you bloodlusted there. Ads. Ads are unironically the most dangerous part of Phase 2. The ads run up the stairs and fixate players. They melee them for a very large amount. All my deaths on PTR were from the ads getting too close to people and meleeing them to death. Make sure that you CC these guys, because they are brutal, and if they get too close, you better run away.